up the whole west side of the continent, from Mexico to Alaska. In Canada, the mountains are mostly within the borders of British Columbia and the Yukon Territory. This Canadian mountain region is made up of a whole series of mountain ranges parallel to the coastline with sheltered valleys between them. But these mountains were not always here, for even mountains grow and change. Millions of years ago, a vast sea covered all of western Canada. Then, very slowly, islands began to appear as the bottom of the sea was forced upward. As the land continued to rise, the islands joined together to form a solid mass of land. This new land is now known as the coastal mountains. But the surface of the earth is always changing. After a very long time, the wind and rain and frost wore away the new mountains until they were not much larger than hills. To the east of the new land mass was a great inland sea which covered all of the prairies. Along this seacoast, another chain of islands began to appear. Slowly they rose higher and higher to form what we now know as the Rocky Mountains. Then, about 1 million years ago, great storms swept in from the Pacific Ocean, covering the high parts of the mountains with snow. The climate became colder, and the snow formed into huge sheets of ice, which completely covered the mountains. In places, they were over a mile in thickness. Finally, after many more years, the ice sheets began to melt. The ice sheets and glaciers made many changes in the mountains by cutting and gouging out the rock. Today, the remains of the ancient glaciers can still be seen, and everywhere we can see the scars they left behind in such things as hanging valleys and deep, rugged fjords. While mountains may look very still and permanent, they are always changing. Sometimes the change takes place one little piece at a time. Wild animals were the first to make their homes in the mountain region. They can roam about the steep mountainsides very easily. Then men arrived. Travel is usually easiest along the valleys which run north and south. When men want to travel east and west, the mountains are like a great wall or barrier, and it's difficult to find a way across or around them. Before British Columbia could become a part of Canada, a way had to be found to build a railway through the mountains. This was a very difficult task. Today, there are 4 railway lines which pass through the mountains to join east and west. One of these railway lines comes out at Prince Rupert. From here, some wheat from the Canadian prairies is shipped to other parts of the world. The other 3 railway lines, and the ones which are most used, come out at Vancouver. These railways have made Vancouver Canada's largest port on the Pacific coast. From Asia, South America, and Europe, ships of many nations land their cargoes here. In exchange for the cargoes they bring to Canada, the ships take back many goods which are produced by Canadians. Vancouver's busy harbor has become Canada's gateway to the Pacific Ocean and to Asia. Vancouver is also one of Canada's largest cities, and 1/2 of all of the people in British Columbia make their homes in its vicinity. In the nearby Fraser Valley are a number of other communities, which are the business centers for the most populated farming section in the mountain region. Across the Strait of Georgia, on the southern tip of Vancouver Island, is the city of Victoria. Victoria is the second largest city and the capital of British Columbia. Three-quarters of all the people in British Columbia live in the southwest corner of the province, in Victoria, Vancouver, and the Fraser Valley. In all of the rest of the mountain region are scattered only 1/4 of the people. The lives of these people are especially affected by the mountains, for the mountains limit what they can do for a living, control the ways they can move about, and even dominate the places where they can live. Some live in small settlements along the rocky coast, while others live on the great interior plateau. Some live along the Rocky Mountain Trench, while still others, in the north, homesteaders are gradually opening up new country. But there are many parts of the mountain region which are still unsettled and empty because they're so difficult to reach. Since there are so few people and roads are so hard to build, the opening up of the interior of the mountain region is a long, slow process. But by using modern machines and modern methods, the people of the mountain region are building roads into areas that were once considered too difficult to reach. The Pacific Ocean is a great storehouse of energy and moisture, and from this source there is a steady flow of moist air against the mountainous coast. Since the temperature of the ocean changes very little, the climate along the coast is moderate in both summer and winter. When the moist winds from the ocean strike the sides of the coastal mountains, the air is forced to rise. As the air rises, it becomes cooler. Clouds form, and the moisture falls on the mountainsides in the form of rain or snow. In this mild, wet climate, some of the trees grow as high as 200 feet, and the forests along the mountainous coast are the most dense and fast-growing in Canada. Because the trees are so big and tall, and because the mountainsides are so steep, loggers in the coastal forest use special methods to remove the logs. Heavy steel cables and winches, driven by powerful engines, are used by the loggers to gather the logs together by dragging them over the rough ground. Then the logs are carried on trucks to the sawmill. These trucks, which are specially built to carry huge loads of logs, move over roads that have been cut into the sides of the mountains. Most of the moisture that comes in from the Pacific Ocean is left behind on the western slopes of the mountains. The dry air then passes over the mountain tops and moves on into the interior of the mountain region. As there is little moisture left, the whole interior is much drier than the coast, and the trees are much smaller. These small trees cover a large part of the broad interior plateau. In some parts of the mountain interior, the climate is very dry. There is only enough moisture for a few trees to grow, and most of the area is covered with thin grass. These grasslands are used by ranchers to graze their cattle and sheep. In the spring, after the long, cold winters of the interior, the cattle are branded with their owner's special mark. Then the cowboys let them out to graze on the grass-covered mountain ranges. In other parts of the mountain region, there is so little rainfall that only desert plants like cactus and sagebrush can grow. But when irrigation canals bring water to the dry soil, it becomes very productive. As the dry soil is very fertile, it only needs water to bring it to life. Some mountain valleys, which were once arid wastes, are now green with orchards and other specialized crops. The fruit grown in these mountain orchards is shipped to markets in other parts of Canada and in Europe. It is of very high quality, and it is often picked with the help of special machines. Only a very small part of the mountain region can be used for farmland. While the people can grow some of their food in the narrow valleys, the rest has to be brought in from other sources. While farmland is limited in the mountain region, along the coast there is another important source of food. At the mouths of the mountain rivers, fishermen set out their nets to catch the fish as they swim in from the Pacific Ocean. To catch the different kinds of fish, some fishermen work from small boats, while others use large boats with powerful engines. Fish that escape the fishermen's nets make their way up the mountain rivers to spawn. These rivers are very swift, and in some places there are obstacles which the fish have difficulty in passing. So, fish ladders are built to help them get past. During the winter, most of the mountain region is covered with snow. But in the spring, the warm sunshine begins to melt the snow, and the water flows down the mountain sides. The melting snow and warm spring rains pour down mountainsides very quickly. So much water pours down that the level of the main rivers rises many feet. Sometimes, when the weather is warm, the rivers rise so high that the river banks can no longer hold all of the water, and the low-lying valleys are flooded. To protect their land from spring floods, the people of the mountain valleys have built dikes. Big machines and huge amounts of rock and gravel are used to hold back the great force and pressure of the mountain rivers. On some mountain rivers, the great force of the water is put to work for the benefit of the people. Dams and power plants have been built to generate electricity. The electric power is used not only in people's homes, but also by industries, which are developing the natural resources of the region. In mines deep under the mountainsides, miners dig out large amounts of valuable metallic ore. Before it can be used, it must be taken to a smelter, where the metal is separated from the rock materials. Electric power is used not only to move the ore from the mines, but it is also used in some smelters to separate the metal from the rock. So far, there are only a few large smelters and industrial plants in the mountain region, but every year, new factories are being built, new industries introduced, and even whole new industrial areas opened up. In the rushing rivers of the mountain region, there is a great deal of water power still to be harnessed. As each new dam is built, the electric power it produces makes possible the growth of new industries. Today, many parts of the mountain region are becoming useful and productive. While the mountains are still a barrier, many Canadians are learning to use them and to make the mountain region their home.